Hey guys, how you going? In this video I'm going to be showing you how to display an image preview on image file select. So for example, if I was to choose a file right here and choose a file, an image file, press open, we can see here we get a nice display or preview of the image. So in this video we're going to be coding this from scratch, and it's very easy to do and it works on all of the modern browsers. So let's go inside this tab right here, just a plain HTML file. It looks like this inside the editor. So we can begin inside the HTML by creating a new file input. So we can say input here with a type of file. The name and ID, we can just call this IMP file, okay? And then down here, we can essentially create the container for the image preview. So we can make a new div with a class of image-preview and an ID of image preview. Then inside here we can specify two more elements. We're going to be specifying the default text right here, and also the actual image tag to populate the image source for, of course, the actual preview. So back inside here, let's begin by just putting the default image preview text. So we can say a new span with a class of image-preview __ default text. So as usual, I'm using the BEM or block element modifier CSS class naming convention, but you can of course name these classes whatever you like. So inside this text span, we can just say, for example, image preview. Okay, so pretty straightforward so far. And then we can also have an image tag. So we make a new image right here with a class of image-preview __ image. This is going to have a source of none by default, and of course we need some alt text, so we can say, for example, image preview as the alt text. And that is essentially the HTML structure to implement this image preview feature. So now we can save this and refresh, and we have this result right here. So of course we have the file input itself, we have the image tag, and also we have the preview text. Okay, cool. So now let's go inside the CSS and work on some styling. So firstly, we're going to target the image preview class. So we can say .image/preview, and this is basically going to be the main container, of course, for the whole image preview, I guess, feature. So by default, we can set a width of 300 pixels and a min height of 100 pixels. This just ensures that we have room or space to show this little preview text. Alternatively, you can also use some padding on this text itself, but for now let's make a min height of 100 pixels and a width of 300 pixels right there. I think it looks quite nice like this. Also a border of 2px solid and a light grey, and also a margin top of 15px, just for, of course, a bit of space between this and the actual file input. So I'm going to save this and refresh here, and we get this result. Not bad. So now we can work on the actual text within the container. So we can go back inside here. We can display this as a flex, and we can say align items to the center, justify content to the center, and a font weight of bold, and a color of a light gray. So this basically is just for the default text. So just as the display flex and these two properties will ensure that it's vertically and horizontally centered. So I'm going to save this and refresh here, and we get this result. So of course we have the actual image tag, which is of course pushing this aside. But if I was to just hide this tag real quickly here, we can see, maybe not, let's just go back inside the editor and actually hide the image tag. So let's go inside here, and by default we're going to say image preview __ image. For the image, we're going to by default hide it, so we say display as none, and a width of 100%. So this width here just ensures that the selected image is not going to overflow the container, and it's going to ensure it remains at 100% of the actual container. So I'm going to now save this and refresh again, and now we have this result right here. We can see the align items and the justify content have centered the default text. So this is basically how the CSS is going to be, and that is all for the CSS. So by default, of course, the image preview text is going to display and the image will be hidden by default. Okay, so now it's just up to the JavaScript to, of course, toggle these CSS display properties to show either the image default text, the image preview default text, or alternatively, if a file is selected, then we want to show the actual image. Okay, cool. So let's head inside the JavaScript right here, and we can begin by defining 4 references to all of our HTML elements. So we can say firstly, define a new constant called imp file equal to document.getElementById, and of course pass in here imp file. Okay, then down here we can specify all 3 of the actual elements for the preview. So we can say firstly const preview container is equal to document.getElementById image preview. So this is why setting an ID on this image preview tag is important. We can reference it using JavaScript. Okay, and then we're going to say const preview image. So the actual image tag itself, this guy right here, is going to be equal to preview container. So the parent dot query selector, we're going to select a class of image preview __ image. So now we're basically just selecting the element with this class that is within the preview container, which of course is this image tag right here. Okay, and now we can do the same thing for the image preview default text. So we can say const, I'm going to call this one preview default text equal to, then here of course, default text. Okay, or image preview default text. I might just reduce the size here, make this something like, let's just say 10, or not, I think it might be down here, make that 12. Okay, so now it's a bit clearer. Cool, so now we have these, you know what, let's go back and make it 14, you probably can't see that. Okay, so we have all of these 4 elements. Okay, we can now essentially add an event listener for the imp file to say when it gets changed, we want to of course do something. So we can say imp file.add event listener. We can say on change, so when the actual when a file is selected, basically we're going to run this function right here, and essentially this function will first actually get the corresponding file object for the selected file. So I'm going to say firstly const file is equal to this.files at index 0. So essentially this refers to the file input. You're saying this.files, it gives you a file list, basically like an array containing the selected file. So of course, in the case of a single file select, not a multi-file select, index 0 is going to be the only file. So I can then console.log the file, save this and refresh the browser, go inside the dev console, and then we can choose file here, and I can choose this this thumbnail once again, press open, and we get here an actual file object. So essentially we're going to be using the file reader class to essentially read this file right here as a data URL. Okay, so now we have the file, we can of course do things with it, but also I want to show you, if I was to press choose file here and then close the window in Chrome, we get undefined as the file. So essentially in Chrome, if you choose a file and then press close without choosing a file itself, then it interprets it as you don't want to actually select a file. So press close, we get undefined. Okay, cool. So let's go back inside the text editor, and we're going to say this. We're going to say, firstly, if we actually have a file, Okay, so if a file was actually chosen or selected, then we can just create a new file reader. We can say const reader is equal to a new file reader, and this object is basically going to be reading this file here as a data URL. And then once we have the data URL read in, we can then set the source of the image tag to be, of course, the data URL. So basically, it lets you read files off your file system, or off your user's file system. Okay, cool. So we can then go down here and we can set some of these display CSS properties for the default text and the image. So if our file was selected, we want to hide the image preview default text. So we can say right here, preview default text dot style dot display is equal to none. Pretty easy, right? Then we can set the actual preview image to be a display of block. So essentially show the image. Alrighty. Then we can go down here and we can say reader dot add event listener. We're going to say load and then run this function. So essentially we're going to be telling the reader to, of course, read the file. Once the reader has finished loading, then we're going to run this function. It's going to be preview image dot set attribute. We're going to set the source attribute of the image tag to be this dot result. So in this particular case, the this keyword refers to the actual file reader itself. The file reader has a property called results, which is going to contain the data URL, providing I say reader dot read as data URL and then pass in the file. Okay, so now with this combination right here, we are of course inserting the read data URL of the file as the image source. I'm also going to show you what this looks like. So I'm going to say console.log and say this right here. So I'm going to save this now and refresh the browser, and then I'm going to choose a file, choose this thumbnail. Once again, press open. We can see it works perfectly fine, and we can see here the value of the this keyword, so the actual file reader. Once it has finished loading or reading the file, we can see the result property right here contains this long data URL string, which of course is the data URL version of the image itself. So that's basically how it's going to work. Okay. Anyway, back inside here, we can finish up by putting an else on this if, and we can say if they have chosen not to choose a file. So basically, if I was to go back inside here and say choose file and select nothing, we want this to go away. I've chosen no file, as it says right here, no file chosen. So to remove this, we can quite easily go back inside here, and we can essentially copy these two lines, and we're going to set the values to be null. So by setting them as null from the JavaScript, this is basically saying it wants to use, tell it to use the default CSS value. So now by setting display as null, it's going to use the CSS defined, which will be, I believe it is inline for span tag. So it'll reset to the default right here. And of course for this one, null means it's going to go back to the CSS, which is display as none. Okay. And we can finish up by then saying preview image dot set attribute, set the source to be nothing. So essentially just reset the source tag. So now I'm going to save this and refresh one more time and just remove this console.log. Refresh one more time, choose a file right here, choose it, press open, works perfectly fine. Then I can choose file and select no file, and it goes back to the default text right there. And that is how you can display an image preview on file upload inputs in JavaScript. Thank you for watching, guys, and I'll see you later.